Growing Up Brooklyn podcast is a Black Sarah Gaming production.
Welcome to the Growing Up Brooklyn podcast. I'm your host, Coach Ty. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest, someone that's as close to family as she can be. I've known her probably now close to 20 years. And I actually just thought about that when I just came back from New York after attending a Holy Communion. And I say our nephew because our common friend, Phil is like a brother to me, and that's actually her brother-in-law. So, and I thought about it when I asked her to come on the podcast. I said, "Man, I've known her almost 20 years, if not longer. That's wow. That's a long time." Um, she's someone that back in the early 2000s was uh big in the hip hop scene and an unsung hero. And I wanted to give her flowers on that because everybody sees the artist, but nobody knows about the people behind the scenes. And she was someone that was behind the scenes, someone that, you know, uh, I just envied in a way because she just ran in such cool circles, and I'll let her talk about it. And recently, she just got into the real estate world. So we're going to have all her contact information. So if you're trying to sell your house, trying to buy a house, whatever you try and do, she going to be the one that you contact because she going to know everybody when the day's done. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Miss Olivia Newton. Thank you for joining the podcast. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you for
And
having me. No,
yeah, and
it's a
like I
cool
said,
introduction. Thank you. You made me feel
yeah,
good.
listen, I wanted to give you your flowers. Like I said, I didn't want to tell you what the introduction was going to be because I know our history and your history. And like I said, a lot of people don't know, your hip hop history. And I wanted to know that, again, those of us that know what you did. And you never did it for recognition. And like a lot of the people behind the scenes, they don't do it for recognition. They do it to make sure that the artist is supported. But, you did it in the time, to me, when hip hop had its best run. And to me, the best stretch run was probably between like 93 and like '08. That's just such a great era that, I don't even fool with the music today for the most part. But I wanted to make sure that I gave you your flowers and know that, again, people won't know you by name, but those of us who know your contribution to hip hop.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I guess when
All
you're doing
right.
it, you don't feel that cool, right? You don't realize what
Right,
people
right.
see,
Yeah.
right?
Correct. But you are probably one of the coolest people I know in hip hop personally, so I
Thank you for
appreciate
that.
that. All right. So like I saw at every podcast, tell me, what is your earliest memory growing up in Brooklyn?
Ooh, I have a bunch, but there's one memory that I do have. I remember my dad always taking me and my siblings to Canarsie Pier, and we would just get a bucket of like Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he would take all the kids in the car. He had a Monte Carlo SS at the time,
Okay.
and he would gather all the kids from the block, and we would go to the pier and just hang out. And it was very like cool to spend time with dad, and just like a cool memory. So that's one of my earliest. Yeah.
Yeah, your dad. Yeah, so your dad was basically the neighborhood dad, the one, and and knowing
Always.
him, I know his personalities. I know he was that cool dad that everybody probably talked to and could talk to, which is excuse me,
Hmm.
which is another blessing when you have that parent, and sometimes you don't realize that
Yeah.
that parent impacted so many other lives, maybe kids that didn't have a father figure. But knowing your dad, and when I talk to your dad, is always a good time. But knowing him, I know he was that neighborhood dad.
Yes. Always. My dad was like my oh, sorry, Ty. Oh,
Are you
sorry.
fine?
Just dropped something. But my dad was always the person that like taught people how to ride their bikes and hung out with especially young guys on the block. Like they always looked up to him. He was in the military, and he just was like the person that was very straight laced, very like, disciplined, but he was at all the games, soccer,
Mhm.
football, everything. So he was just that dad. He was
Wow,
he
that's
was a dad to many, you know?
yeah, yeah. And that's what our neighbor, and that's, I think, what our, in today's day and age, I think that's what our young kids are missing, is that neighborhood person that, you can talk to, or that like me as a coach with girls basketball, I tell the girls, you can talk to me, I'll never judge you, but if it's
Right.
something that I feel endangers you, then I have to tell your parents. But
Right.
like I said, that's just a lost art, and so I definitely appreciate your dad for that.
Yes, he was that dad. Still is.
Still is. Yeah, 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 yeah. In fact, yes, still is. 'Cause like I said, I talk to him a lot, so still is, still is. So how would you describe your neighborhood back then, and how would you compare it to how it is today?
Hmm. I would say that, and as you know, when we grew up, it was a lot more community. Everyone known each other. Neighbors talked to each other. You couldn't do anything without your neighbor telling your parent. Oh, I saw Olivia going to. Was she still allowed to go there? I've seen her. It was like that type of community. Now you don't have that. The kids don't. The parents don't talk to each other. Neighbors are not neighborly, and that sense of community, I don't think is there anymore.
Yeah, and that's the missing piece that I think, too many people say, "Oh, don't chastise my child, don't talk to my child." And no, like, your child was wrong. Like, I tell a story. There was an issue that happened back in East New York, and this man was on the news and was like, "Oh, my child would never hurt nobody." And I'm like, "Dude, your child was one of the biggest bullies in the street. Like, you didn't even know your own child." And
Right.
it's unfortunate that, and that's how it is today, that, to your point, a lot of these people,
Yeah.
don't know their own children, but then you won't let your neighbor that you should know, that you should trust, because you're going to want that neighbor when somebody kicking in your window and breaking in your house. You're going to say, "Oh, why didn't you call
Exactly.
the police?" "Well, you told me to
Exactly.
mind my
You
business,
told
so
me,
I let
Mama.
them rob your house."
Exactly. Exactly.
So tell me about so growing up in Canarsie, obviously you had a lot of diversity with a lot of different races and cultures. Tell me about the diversity growing up in Canarsie, back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, when my parents bought their home in Canarsie, we were like one of the first Black families to move in the neighborhood. Around that time, I was a baby. I was like one, probably
Hmm.
1979 is when my
Hmm.
parents bought the home. We moved to Canarsie. Throughout school, I went to school with Italians, mostly the majority of it. The kids that went to my schools were Italian or Irish.
Hmm.
Um, Hardly any brown and Black kids, I would say. It started to change maybe like 92.
Mm.
I'll say
Wow,
like
that
90, yeah, 91. So majority of the time I went to school with not anyone that looked like me, really. But it was not a bad thing
right.
because, you know what I mean? I made good friends. I still have friends to this day that we keep in touch, that I love them. They were like family to me. But it also taught me how to deal with different people. And
Yeah, and
also,
correct. And that's a lost art that people don't realize, that growing up and dealing with different cultures, because again, I went to Brooklyn Tech, and
yeah.
that taught me, because again, growing up in East New York, it was predominantly Black with Hispanic mixed in. I think maybe less than 1% white, and to
Mhm.
your point, that's what we looked at Canarsie as, was predominantly a white neighborhood. So to hear that it transitioned as late as it did, because I actually thought it transitioned earlier, but it actually, to what you're saying, that it didn't transition to like the early 90s. So that's a big part of your schooling growing up.
Yeah, because at the time, I don't know if you remember, I'll say like 89, 90s when they started doing like the busing and
Hmm.
the zoning, I would say.
Hmm.
So by the time I went to junior high school is when it went into effect basically. So when I got to junior high school is when I was able to be around kids that looked like me,
Right.
really,
Right.
because we had the kids coming from Brookline, we had kids coming from where you were living at, East New York, we had kids, so it was like a culture shock for me too, because I'm like, oh,
Right.
oh,
Right.
yeah. So now I'm around people that really look like me. Like I would see them sprinkled in here and there, And I grew up in Bed-Stuy too. A lot of my family was in Bushwick. A lot of my family was in Bed-Stuy. So I know that there was a difference of where I lived and where they lived. So, but it was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, no,
You know
no,
what I
it's always
mean?
good. Yeah, it's always good to see that transition. So
Yeah.
tell me about some of the teachers that you had back then that maybe has an influence on your life and that shaped you to who you are today.
I had two. I had two good teachers in PS 279 because I know this is a Brooklyn podcast, so I'm gonna be naming names, right? So I had two two teachers in PS 279. I had a teacher, her name was Miss Engelbert, and I had a fifth grade teacher, his name was Mr. Pole.
Okay.
And I was very quiet as a child, very shy. And Miss Engelbert was like my kindergarten teacher. She ended up being my third grade teacher too, but she's the one that kind of got me out of my shell more so. And she made it for where I didn't have to. She was made it where I was like, I can be unapologetically me.
Yeah.
And she was a white, Jewish teacher, but she was very much loving towards her kids, and she just always allowed us the space to, just speak on things and have opinions, and even at that young age. But Mr. Poe was the one he taught me how to be like an aggressor. Like to just stand on that. You make a
Right.
decision, you stand on that. And he taught us to grow up a little bit quicker. Like you're about to go to junior high school, things are changing in the world, and you got to be on point. And I don't care if you're a girl, you're going to be good at math.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're going to be good in science. You're going to be good at certain things. I don't care if you're a female, because guess what? Will be doing things a lot differently in 10 years.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I shared that with some friends of mine that, realizing, a lot of, we didn't have a lot of, black and brown teachers back then. A lot of them were Jewish women that came into the neighborhoods and they really, really cared. Like they wanted to see you do well. Like they
Yes.
weren't coming there to put a foot on your neck. They were trying to give you a hand to pull you up. So it's good to hear that even like I said in Canarsie, you guys had that same
Yeah.
type of experience.
I did. And I still think about things come to me. I remember certain instances, and I just chuckle. I'm like, they
Yeah.
and it's crazy because you're like, I learned that from this person, or I learned this from that teacher, and it's like you wonder where they are now, right? So you could think,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I tell a story. I had a second grade teacher because I've always had this voice since I was a kid. Like my voice has always been deep and
really?
slow, and she used to so somebody would like she would make me read a passage, right? And I guess making sure I could read, and then she would have somebody read it behind me, and I was maybe this is maybe about I'm 49 now, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized how disrespectful that was. I was like, wait a minute, and it was a black teacher at that. I was like, yo, I was talking to my friends. I was like, yo, that was mad disrespectful that she had people reading behind me like that. But I can't help my voice. I sound like a grown man out the womb, I guess. I don't know, but yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. So that's my little educational experience. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about your influence in hip hop, but tell me what role did music, fashion, or food play in your upbringing?
Hmm. My dad is a musician, and he plays multiple instruments. I always grew up around music. My parents are Caribbean. My dad always introduced us to different types of music, different genres. I used to sit and listen to him, so I knew about Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and The Doors and all that before, you know, it was like a thing for, us to know. But I
Right, right.
knew, I grew up around that grunge because my dad introduced us to that. African beats, Afro beats. My dad introduced us to that. A lot of music was played in my basement, you know. my dad had a turntable, so he was just always
Yeah.
making sure music was being played in the house, and that's what I remember. Um, I started singing. I saw myself being an actual artist, and my mom worked in the fashion industry for years, so I was introduced to fashion at an early age. I used to be in at her job. Sometimes we would visit, and she would be picking out fabrics and or the notions, in the back, and Donna Karen would walk through, or stuff like that. Yeah, Tommy Hilfiger would be there, but I had no clue this was what it was. Like, I'm wearing Perry Ellis and stuff like that, and I don't know anything about that, but my mom was like the fashion, and my dad was the music.
Nice, nice. And what about some of the food? Cause listen, I'm gonna tell you guys right now. She made a soup last Saturday. That soup was slamming. I was like, as soon as I walked, I told you, as soon as I walked in the door, that thing just like, I was like, oh, I gotta get whatever that is. I gotta get me some. So tell us about some of the food growing up.
So food, parents are from St. Lucia, you know, is nothing but good, pure goodness coming from the kitchen, different
Amen.
smells, spices, everything. My dad cooked too, so he introduced us to a lot of different things. But my mom was like the one that really taught me how to cook. And it wasn't like she taught me. I would just sit and keep her company in the kitchen, and I would watch her, and,
Yeah.
so all the Caribbean foods. The soup is tradition. So when we have big, like a communion, baptism,
Hmm.
we would make that soup, and it's from the French. So French have this thing. Even Haitians, I believe, they make soup jumeau during the New Year for the New Year. So like it's supposed to be like a melting, like bring happiness and sweetness
Yeah.
to the home, and it's a good hearty thing. But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, listen, that set the tone. Listen, that set the tone for the rest of the food because I was trying not to be greedy, but I definitely had to think about three bowls. So to the point where I mean, I ate a little bit later, but and I'm gonna be honest, because of the dumplings in it, it took me back to thinking about my grandma. That was my, I was telling your sister, I was telling her that, um, I have there was a letter, I have it somewhere. There was a letter that I wrote. I was at sleepaway camp, and I said I was looking forward to coming home and eat my grandmother's chicken and dumplings. So when
Aw.
you made that soup, it kind of took me, and I said, and I wanted to save this for the podcast. I was like, I was
Aw,
going to tell you,
that is so
but it,
cool.
but it took me back. I was like, and part of my friend was like, yo, this shit is slamming. I was like, holy smokes.
Um,
So
that's
next
so
time I
cute,
come up for
Zara.
an extended period of time, I'm definitely going to send a soup request because
Yes, of course.
that thing was on point,
Oh,
on
I'm
point.
happy. I'm happy for that. Thank you.
No. So now that you're diving into the real estate space, tell me about the changes that you've seen in Brooklyn and how much has changed from a real estate perspective now that they got these thousand high rises going damn near everywhere. So tell me, your thoughts on where it was 20 years ago to where it is now.
Hmm. Development wise, I feel like it's pros and cons to that. Um, there was a lot of open space, unused space, and that also caused a lot of like, making it brought down the value of the neighborhoods too. But I
Yeah,
feel like in Brooklyn now is a little overcrowded, and that's just from a personal standpoint. But as far as development and being able to give people jobs and more homes, it's pros and cons to it. There's pros and cons to it. I don't have like an objective like view on it, to be honest. I'm not, and I'm definitely in real estate to one being long term and being an
yeah,
investor as well, developer maybe, because I work for a construction company right now, and but at the same time it's like I'm not only in it for the money.
right.
I want to be able to I want to give back to my community in some way. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm fairly new to the real estate game, so I'm still learning phase right now. And just trying to get my foot out there, get my name out there. But I'll be there soon.
Yeah, listen, knowing you, I don't doubt it because you've definitely always excelled in everything that you've done. So I
Thank
don't doubt it. Unfortunately, I have no desire to move back only because I don't want to see snow ever again in my life.
Ah,
I'm good. I am good. I
I'm
am good. I don't want to see snow ever again in my
Nah,
life.
I always wanted, like, I'm always a New York girl. You know, like, I
Mm,
love New York. I I mean, I go to other states and I'm like, I could see myself staying here, but ultimately I'm just like, I know how to navigate New York like
yeah,
nobody's business, you know? But I guess it's really about where you are at that point in your life. Like,
yeah.
where am I gonna
And that's all.
where am I
And
gonna
that's all
go,
it depends
Ty?
on. Nah, listen, I shoveled enough snow. I played, and then listen, the parking. Oh my God, the
Yes.
parking in the city is crazy. I love just being able to. I mean, you have that luxury for the most part in Brooklyn, but if you own a house, you got to park on the street, and I ain't trying to do all that, man. Like, I can still parallel park, but I like the convenience of pulling up into a
Just pulling up,
driveway,
right?
just pulling up, just pulling up.
Oh, Ty.
So listen, so just jumping back to Canarsie real quick, were there any like local traditions or festivals or community events that went on? Because again, for from an East New York perspective, I mean, you went to Eastern Parkway or Flatbush for the Caribbean Day, stuff. But what were some of the things that maybe people didn't know about that happened in Canarsie?
Oof. A lot of community um gatherings, like they did a lot of fundraising and stuff in Canarsie. For a lot of different like um events for kids, scholarships, things like that. Like the families always came together. Even if, a family needed something, they were there to help. So there were a lot of different things. I would say, I don't know about now, but me
Hmm.
growing up, like I always knew, like again, goes right back to community. There was more parents involved in their kids, especially with school sports and raising funds for schools. My dad was very much involved with that, especially
Yeah.
whether it be like spending a whole night at bingo because they're trying to raise money for these kids to get you uniforms, and he's coming
Hmm.
home smelling like a bag of cigarettes. Like it was you know the dads being on the field with the kids every weekend, or the kids coming on a block and they're kicking balls with the kids, and they practice is on practice after practice. So it's like there was a lot going on, and the districts, the schools districts to me were amazing when I was coming up.
Yeah.
District 18, shout out to whoever's on District 18. But I think we were the best. We got the key twice to the city.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, it was a lot of kids going to school. The parents would raise money because we wanted to be in like the arts. Like the arts were big growing up, whether it be acting. We had drama club, we had glee club, we had the music club. It was amazing, amazing, and that's what I wanted to give my girls, that experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean it's crazy to hear like because again, we played baseball, me and my siblings at Five Diamonds, which is right across from the Pathmark, which is basically on the
Mhm.
East New York Canarsie border.
What I
But
would say, yeah.
it's amazing to hear, like I said, the fundraising and the uniforms, because again, we didn't see that, but then these communities would show up and give Mr. Rosado a check. Shout out to the Rosado family for Latin Souls baseball, and just a lot that went on in Canarsie that
Yeah.
again you're hipping me to the game because from the outside looking in, you always thought that there were, I mean, and again, I know there was a divide between Brookline and Canarsie, but there was still a lot of good that went on,
Yes.
despite that.
Yeah,
Despite that.
definitely.
So let me ask you, what's one piece of Brooklyn that you carry with you no matter where you go? What's the one thing? And I have an idea, but I want to hear what you say.
The one piece of Brooklyn that I carry with me, growing up being a princess of Brooklyn, um, is being strong. And that's like your mindset, being able to get through anything, regardless of what's being thrown at you. I had to like navigate the streets of Brooklyn in the early 90s, which was not easy.
No.
And it helped me in a lot of ways growing up around, the older cousins, the brothers, and people from the neighborhood. And it just helped me so much, especially in the music industry, trying to learn how to carry myself a certain type of way. And I don't care what people say about Brooklyn. We are the most resilient. We are the most resilient, intelligent, strongest people that I know come out of Brooklyn.
Amen. Amen.
So that's what I take from Brooklyn. And also the pizza.
Oh,
Um
listen.
specifically the spot next to the train station on Rockaway Parkway.
Oh, by the L train.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And listen, you see, I already knew. I already knew. Like, so crazy, so quick, crazy story. There was times, so again, coming from East New York, going to Kings Plaza, we had to take the 6 bus, and then the 6 bus would drive through the little depot there
Yes.
on the train. There were a handful or more times where my grandmother would get off the bus, we would get a slice of pizza and pay another fare to get back on the bus to go to Kings Plaza. The
Yeah.
pizza at that spot was
Kings Plaza. There's so many different things about Brooklyn that is just like dear to my heart. I have so many different memories, like Kings Plaza, hanging out with my parents, or getting the cookies from the spot. Oh, I forgot the name.
the
Like
cookie house.
the
The
cookie
cookie house.
house. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different things that we did as kids growing up. And we would ride our bikes all the way from the house. From there, we would go to the pier. We'll end up
Mhm.
by like places we weren't supposed to go. No, but we had so much fun go-karting. Like I remember, like my brother and the guys from around the neighborhood building go-karts
Wow.
and racing them. And like the blocks would play hide and seek together because we had like the alleyways, and everybody knew
Alleyways.
how the alleyways were, and like we were from like 100th Street to like 105th. Like we're all just running around summertime, block parties. Like my dad used to bring the trucks and stuff for the kids, to even like the actual tanks, like the trucks from the army, and the kids would be all in it, and he would give them a tour. And like those memories, those are like
Wow.
the best memories. Yes. So Brooklyn is very dear to my heart. I can't really choose one thing
No,
about
no,
Brooklyn, you know?
no. And I tell everybody, all the time, that was, I would never change my childhood for nothing. Like Brooklyn, like you said, was just the diversity, the food, even being able to bend over and drink out of the damn fire hydrant, like just the little
What?
things
The
that you
hose
could
was
do.
everything. That hose water was
Yeah,
everything. When you're thirsty, you're outside all day. If you go inside, you're staying inside.
yeah.
So you're
That
going to
street
think,
light, come on. That's right. That street light, come on. You know it's time to get your butt inside.
right? Just a lot of different things. I remember my dad used to have he used to always garden. Now, my dad, he loves his garden.
Hmm.
So, but we would just be in the backyard picking tomatoes, just eating the tomatoes off the vine, or my dad having like vegetables, or my mom growing like peppermint tea leaves, and like those little things. That's home.
Yeah, that's home. That's the exact term. It's home.
It's
It's
home.
home.
Brooklyn is home.
So, Olivia, thank you again for joining the podcast. I appreciate having you on. And
Thank you
again, these
for
are
having
conversations.
me.
Yeah, and these are conversations people we've had off camera,
Yes.
and traditionally I just knew that I had to have her on, and the story, and she had a great story to tell, and just learning about her growing up in Canarsie. And before I let you go, tell the people what is next step, where they can find you. We'll have some information in the comments, but tell them how they can get in contact you, where to follow you, let them know the next step.
Also, I am working with Keller Williams Gold Realty right now, Gold Coast. I am an agent usually, so I handle all of sales and buying of property. If you want to invest, you want to start a development, you want to build your portfolio, I'm the person to talk to. So you can follow me on Instagram. I will be having a page for just my realty. But as right now, I'm Olivia _ Luna Lux Events. That's where I'm at on Instagram. Because I work also got to plug my sister in there
Yeah.
with events. And that's it really. And you'll be hearing and seeing more of me. And Ty, I hope you're going to be jumping on the investment train.
Yeah, I need to definitely
Yes.
uh diversify my portfolio, as they say.
Yes. It's important. And to build generational wealth for us is very important. So
Yes.
that's where I am. Keller Williams, Gold Coast Realty. That's where I'm at. And you can find me on there. You go on the website. I do have my own profile, Olivia Newton. And, just reach out to me. I have all my information on there.
Okay. And again, we'll be sure to share it in the comments when people check out the pod. And again, thank you for coming on.
Of course,
And I
Ty.
totally
You're my
appreciate it.
family, of course.
Amen.
You
Yes,
always
amen to
support
that.
us. You always support us. We love you. We've been nothing but positive to me and my sister. And it's been nothing but love. And I appreciate you. Even if it was just
I
five
love you
minutes for
guys.
me to talk to you,
I
it's
love
you.
you guys too. Definitely appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. So
Yes.
as always in the podcast, you could have spent doing anything else in the world, but you spend it with us and we appreciate it. Yo, big up Brooklyn. Yo, we
We got
out.
Brooklyn.
Peace.
Nah, love you, Ty.
Love you too.
That's a wrap for today's Growing Up Brooklyn podcast episode. Be sure to like and hit that subscribe button.